So what could Jesus mean when he says, don't swear? In some translations, don't make an oath of any kind on anything. I think it's a question we'll have to answer for ourselves. But I think it's fascinating that he couches this idea, this missive, this, maybe even some people would take it as a command, not to make any oaths, between telling men specifically of his day not to leave their wives, and telling people, telling his followers not to give in to violence, not to react in violence, even if violence is done to them. I don't think that's an accident, this sandwich. Because when we hear, well, don't make any oaths at all, and Jesus is very clear on that, at least in this literal translation, we might think, well, okay, I can finally leave the old lady. Not that I would want to, thank God.
The young lady.
Yeah, it's a phrase where I'm from, I don't know.
It's a phrase where we're from.
Yeah, it's a phrase up here too, I thought so. I didn't move that far. Just up a little bit. Or maybe we can get away with, not quite living up to our oaths and promises. I mean, I'll leave that answer up to you. But it's no coincidence that he says, don't leave your wives, because the men of the day could divorce their wives. The women had less privilege, less power in that way, so he wasn't addressing them. But I bet today he might say it to both, maybe because he was about to talk about promises. He wanted to make sure people knew this wasn't an excuse to do whatever you want. We may promise to be nonviolent, we may have the Hippocratic oath, etc. And then you hear this from Jesus, you're like, well, okay, I don't have to listen to that oath anymore. I don't have to do what I've been doing, which is my best for people. I can just kind of let go and be reactive. In a way, I do think he's telling us to let go, actually. In a way, I do think this is about letting go, but it's not about letting go to our baser desires. That's why it's coached like this. No. It's about letting go of how caught up we are in our oaths and promises. We tend to carry them around like luggage, like baggage. And we may not even call them promises. They may just be kind of internal promises to ourselves. I'll be successful one day. I won't let anyone get away with that again. There's a lot of them. And we tend to live in that kind of space. And Christ, as we've heard him say throughout Matthew 5, we're still on Matthew 5, folks. That's how much he said in this one chapter for us to deconstruct and look at. We're still in Matthew 5. He said over and over again to let go of our habitual thinking, our minds a little bit. Indeed, he says, let your yes be yes and your no, no. But he also said, don't keep a promise. So he's not talking about a yes in the future, funny enough. At least it doesn't sound like it. He's talking about a present yes. What is true for you right now? We tell our friends, we're already like this. We tell our friends, yes, I'll be there. And then we try to be there. It doesn't quite work out all the time. Now, of course, the more we're like that, the less they want to hang out with us. But indeed, he's talking to the reality of the flimsiness of our promises sometimes. And also something deeper. A call to open to the spaciousness of mind, of spirit, when we're not as caught up in our internal promises, in how we should think. All the things that we've built up to defend ourselves. What we think makes us feel good. Sometimes it doesn't even make us feel good. We just know it does. We're like, oh, what's the thing that makes me feel good? And sometimes we have to convince ourselves, well, this is making me feel good. And I think we do that kind of thing naturally because often life is tough. There's a lot on our shoulders, in our head. Sometimes we put it on other people. We put it on the world, the state of the world, war, famine, hurts of many kinds. And so we turn to our habits, the things we promise ourselves will make us feel better because of a good impulse. Being kind to ourselves, being compassionate. Having space for even those impulses is actually good. But often we're too in them for our own liking. We may not know it. We're too in them, and they bring their own kind of heaviness, their own kind of toil. And so Christ tells us, let go of oaths. Stop thinking so far ahead. He says, don't promise on Jerusalem. Don't promise on anything. Don't promise on anything. Because unless your yes is yes and your no, no, it's from the devil. Now, I used to hear this scripture brought up in church when I was growing up. I grew up, as most of you know, in a Baptist church with my grandfather as preacher, and then in the Salvation Army. And at the same time, my dad would take me to masjids, and there'd be talks there, but they were often in Arabic, and I didn't know Arabic. And I would often hear these verses kind of related to really swearing on something. This is how us kids often talked about it too. I remember in like youth group with other Salvation Army kids, it's like, well, this means don't like swear, but just be truthful. Live up to your promises. If you say something, do it. So in a way, it's taken almost reverse from how it sometimes sounds. In some translations, it's oaths, promises, etc. So sometimes it just depends on which Bible you're looking at, how you might automatically read this, funny enough. And maybe there's something to be said for that translation as well, that understanding that yes, we should be as honest as possible. But I can't help but connect the dots between all of Christ's sayings about not worrying about the future, not thinking so far ahead, not dredging up the past, and letting it go because his burden is light. And he's not talking about a physical burden here. He's talking about a mental one, a spiritual one. Indeed, in a way, he's saying all our turmoil, even about religion. Is this right religion? Am I doing this right? Am I going to heaven? Am I going to hell? Is there reincarnation? I don't want to be a worm in my next life. At least give me, let me be a dog, God. Okay, so we never know what the future holds. And Christ, in a way, is asking us to let go of that as well. I promise you the Bible is always right. I swear an oath on my understanding of the Bible. No. Even me today, I try to share what I hear in the text, what I reflect upon, what I come across, what makes sense to me, and what I think makes sense for this community. But I can't tell you that's entirely true. I can't swear an oath on that. Jesus is right. Stop swearing an oath. I can't be sure in that way. Indeed, words are never sure in that way. Words are metaphorical automatically, no matter how literal you want to be. When I say grass, the word grass represents what we think of as grass. Some people may disagree about which parts of it is grass. So often it depends on our mutual understanding of a word to even have a conversation, and sometimes we walk away thinking about someone's motives totally differently than we thought, than they actually had, I should say. And we're still not on the same page, even if we have a good understanding of the words. So Christ is asking us to let go. So let's do that right now. To let go of all those internal promises, those oaths, our assuredness of something, even if it's totally true, you're sure it's true, the earth is round, I'm sure of it. Just letting go of the needless pondering if we can. And often we can't, right? And so noticing it as it arises. Noticing that it arises in something greater, something more peaceful than what arises itself. It's okay to be kind to ourselves. And so as ponderings continue, just notice how habitual our thinking is, how changeful. And that we watch this changefulness of mind from a place beyond change because it's imperceptible. It's what perceives. The Lord and other sages tell us that our fundamental life already is peace and light and love. But when we're so caught up in the way things should be, in our judgment, because things aren't living up to a promise that we've made for them, that things will be good in this way and that way, we lose our sense of that peace. We start living in our projections, defensive and anxious at times. Maybe always. So let's take a few deep breaths. Setting aside our heavy ponderings, not putting as much interest into them, investment. And noticing the almost imperceptible, spacious light of God. you.